first. He's the warm-up act, and then Greg is the headliner tonight. Good evening. My name is Marty Ackett. Most of you probably know me. I'm the adult programming coordinator for Peter White Public Library. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here to this month's authors reading virtually. And I just have one group that I need to thank tonight. It's the Friends of the Peter White Public Library for funding this reading series. And they provide a lot of funds for a lot of the stuff that I do here at the library. So I'm always so grateful to the Friends for all the support that they give us. And tonight, it's my pleasure to welcome to authors reading virtually my really good friends, Greg Ormson and Jonathan Johnson. So let me give you a little bit of detail here. Authors reading virtually has been one of the highlights every month for me since I was hired here at the library. I started this series, I think, like the month after I began this job, and it has allowed me to connect with some really amazing authors and people. Karen Dion, Natasha Trethewey, John Smolens, Thomas Lynch, Sonia Sones, a lot of other really, really great writers. But this series has also allowed me to reconnect with some amazing friends and writers also. Jonathan and Greg are two of those really amazing people. So we go back a long way, Greg and Jonathan and I, over 30 years. I did the math, and that's correct, which is so weird. Yeah. That was when we were in our grad school days together, and I had a lot more hair at that time, and it was much darker than this. So two children tend to give you a lot of gray hair. We were all working on our master's degree here at Northern Michigan University, and I sort of like to think of us as part of this writing wild bunch of the English department. You know, but that's only if the wild bunch like wrote poetry, essays, and stories, and when they got drunk, talked about transcendentalism. I think that's the only way we were the wild bunch anyway. But that was us. So reuniting with a couple of my wild bunch cohorts from Northern Michigan University is a real thrill for me. So let me tell you a little bit about Jonathan. Jonathan's poems have been anthologized in Best American Poetry, published widely in literary magazines, and read on National Public Radio. His most recent books are the poetry collection May is an Island and the memoir The Desk on the Sea. He's currently working on a work on a new fiction collection, short stories called The Little Lights of Town, that's set in Marquette. Stories from that manuscript has appeared in the Way North anthology of Upper Michigan literature and numerous literary magazines, including the recent 50th anniversary issue of Plowshares, the recent 20th anniversary issue of Bellevue Literary Journal, and forthcoming in Missouri Review. Jonathan teaches in the Masters of Fine Arts program at Eastern Washington University and migrates between Washington, his hometown in Marquette, and his ancestral village, and I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, his ancestral village of Glenelg in the Scottish Highlands, right, where his cousins are still crofters. So please join me in giving a big Peter White Public Library welcome to my good friend, Jonathan Johnson.
Oh, man, Marty, thank you so much. This is it's so wonderful. I can't believe the intimacy of this, to be so far away and yet have this intimate little, it's almost like we're sitting at one of those long picnic tables at Charlie's in 1991 or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, Marty, thank you so much for inviting me and Greg, and thanks for doing the series. I talk ad nauseum about Marquette to everyone who will listen, which I know I shouldn't do. I'm sorry, Marquette people. I should cut it out. I can't help myself. And the good news is nobody believes a word of it. They're like, yeah, no, there's no way. There's no way it's as good as you say it is. And when I describe the library, I say, you have to understand Peter White Public Library is akin to a small liberal arts college. The number of things they do, the programs, the people who work there. I mean, you get doctorate in English running a reading series and a public outreach program. It's a fantastic, fantastic institution. I'll be home in 3 weeks for end of July and first couple weeks of August. So I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of you then. Meanwhile, we're down here in Indonesia. Our daughter, who I think most of you know, Anya, graduated in May. And a long time ago, when it seemed like we'd never have to financially fulfill this promise, we said, well, when you graduate, you pick a place you want to go in the world. She's majoring in foreign affairs. She wants to be a diplomat. I guess I have to start speaking in past tense. She majored in foreign affairs and still wants to be a diplomat. At any rate, so long ago, we promised, well, you pick a place in the world you want to go and we'll go there. And so she picked Bali. So here we are. So I thought I've been writing about this place. And so I thought I'd start with a poem that connects the two. I'm going to read 4 poems and then a very short story. The 4 poems are all set here. So it's because we're all good friends and this is an intimate group, I figured I'd share all new work. These are sketches, right? I mean, these are just sitting on the beach or sitting in a restaurant, thatch roof restaurant, writing sketches. So I thought I'd just share some new sketches from Bali. And then I've got this one short story set in Marquette, very short story that I'll read as well. But this first Bali poem actually links that place and this. So I think you'll recognize a bunch of this. Anya points out the Southern Cross. If your musical canon is at all like mine, you're already thinking of the Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young song, to which I'd add my own association of hearing it covered for 35 years by Jim and Ray in one noisy bar or another along 3rd Street in my own coastal hometown. And here's the thing about art, including, or perhaps especially, an old pop song. It helps us give ourselves our lives and inhabit them. You should see the way Ray leans into the vocals. I'm going to stop and say, many of you have seen the way Ray leans into the vocals. Beard to the mic, bright guitar over Jim's bass and backing chorus, and music is her name. So for my entire adult life, the constellation has traveled in my mind with the tune, as maybe it has for you, understanding why you came this way, regardless, of course, of whatever domestic catastrophe Stills was running from when he wrote it. I came this way, Bali, because of my daughter and whatever complexity of her own variables led her here. She and my wife and I are walking up from the beach and top the cliff above the night's bass notes and surf, dark palms silhouette against the stars, breeze against the fronds, as she points it out, crux, 5 fingers above the horizon. 3 bright stars and 1 dim one make the shape of a kite. An act of love on her part, a little gift, after hearing me numerous times go on about Jim and Ray and the song, as I have to you. Every so often, something turns out better than we imagined. A daughter around the age I was in Van Gogh's Pizza and Lounge at the beginning of a little vision I'd supposed would be as solitary and sweetly mournful as Ray made it sound. Propped up in bed later, she reads Wikipedia and tells me the constellation was visible in most of Europe in the 4th millennia BC and didn't drop entirely below the horizon for the Greeks, for whom it was part of Centaurus, until 400 AD. Delighted to surprise me, she explains the precession of the equinoxes. Right, the Earth wobbles on its axis, I recall. And I can hear the delight in her voice when she gets to be the one to tell her professor of poetry dad that Dante may have been referring to it, 4 stars not seen since our ancestors, in the Divine Comedy. A little something I'll add to my future students' experience of that art. For Australian Aboriginal culture, it was the head of the emu in the sky, she reports, and one of the stars is named Mimosa. Thusly, my Southern Cross work of art in this poem of an affection, silhouette of palm fronds and my daughter's arm and finger pointing to the night sky, that will travel with me now back to 3rd Street when the guitar settles back and Ray sings, "When you see the Southern Cross for the first time." I promise I will not be singing again. That's all I'm going to subject you to. Perhaps Greg will be singing. Greg can sing. I can't count the number of hours I've enjoyed sitting listening to Greg sing, and so maybe we'll get to do that today. So there's a menu of things that can happen to you when you're in your 50s. And it's pretty grim. And it's a good thing to keep that menu in mind when one of the lesser things happens, like a small little appetizer, an aperitif, like maybe some horrific dessert. And so the thing that happened to me is this thing called Meniere's disease. It got one of my ears, causes vertigo and tinnitus and permanent hearing loss. Got one of my ears. And I thought, well, okay, we could fly on one wing. That's all right. Everybody on one side. Jim Stedman, who some of you may remember, was deaf in one ear. I don't know why, but I remember always being on one side of him. And so I thought, well, if Jim could do it, I could do it. And then I don't know if it was the stress of COVID and all of us thinking the world was going to end, we're all going to lose our jobs, or what it was. But sure enough, and it happens from time to time. Sure enough, about 10 years later, my other one went out. This is a couple years ago. So now I have bilateral tinnitus and profound hearing loss. So this poem is called Southern Hemisphere with Tinnitus and Profound Hearing Loss. Every human voice, including my own, comes now through one of those small metal waste cans from elementary school over my head. It will be this way from now on, for which I am sad sometimes, the lost clarity of others. My wife says she's sending the cats to another dimension. Sorry? I'm sending for the cat's medication. Oh, right. I walk with our daughter beside my left, less worse ear. And so it goes. Most people don't die all at once, but by degrees. And yet, listen, all the way down here in the soft palms above a rocky cove beach and rolling surf, no squealing tone gets through the crash and wash and deep concussions. And that constant voice of ocean sounds, even so far from home, like it always has. So I've always been happy when the waves are up on Lake Superior, and now with this hearing loss situation, I'm all the more happy because the things that make it not noticeable for me are waterfalls, fast moving rivers, and waves. I can't hear the tinnitus, and I can hear the water exactly how it always sounded. Let's see here, two more short volley ones. I thought I'd read this since this is what it is right now. An Indian Ocean sunrise. I don't know if you can see the volcano or not. To the right of the palm tree, right. Indian Ocean sunrise. 24 fishing boats a mile from shore make gray demarcations on silver over palm fronds and flowering bird song. A new orange light finds me, this page. 30 years I have been bowing to things. Sometimes they bow back. And last of the poems, Long After a Grief. The theme today is wellness, taking care of yourself. Greg's going to read all about yoga and motorcycle riding and adventure, and it's been really a fountain of youth for Greg. I've always known Greg, and he's always been about 12 in all the good ways. And at about I don't know, he'll tell you precisely, but deep into middle age, he found this practice of yoga, and he just looks amazing, and more importantly, feels amazing, and is able to do the things he loves, the adventures and the motorcycle riding, and he teaches it to others. So I'm very much looking forward to that. One of the big themes in my own wellness has been figuring out grief. Stanley Kunitz, the poet, said his lifelong project was to catalog living and dying at once. And I think that feels pretty right to me. My poetic hero is Keats, of course, as a lot of you know. And I think that's what we're all doing, is cataloging living and dying. But I've been making myself very aware of it wherever I go. Long after a grief. A small fishing boat goes out from Bali. High prow, blue sun canopy. Waves come in and foam the rocks and sand. The few people I've passed this morning bowed to me. I touched my palms together and bowed to each of them. Alone with 5 cafe tables right above the cove, I remember in the breeze and spray, loving my life without trying. And then my wife is most of you know this. It's so fun to read to people who know the context. So most or all of you know that Amy's a family therapist, a social worker. She works with parents who are trying to keep custody or reunite with their kids, or custodial adults who are trying to keep custody or reunite with their kids. And she comes home with stories, and some of them are pretty damn harrowing. And so one of the things I can do is I can move the story 1,700 miles away. I can change all the details. And that's kind of my way of coping with some of the things that she tells me. You'll recognize a lot of the places in this. It's called Spotted. Two cyclopses of light, adult tall and child short, move down the road, cathedraled in night and pine. It's long past the child's bedtime, and this is the first weekend visit, a trial. But she wanted to see the salamanders, blue spotted salamanders. They've been studying them in school. She brought him the picture she drew. They migrate from the forest, she said, to the bog to have their babies, but they go at night because they're scared of the day. He stuck her drawing on the fridge with the Pomps tire service magnet left by the previous tenant. The road through the park is closed at night for 6 weeks each spring during the migration. This is something special they can do together, a new memory they can make, a way to mark their fresh start. Her hand in his is like the needle, but better. It's still too tight, she says, suddenly on the verge of panic, and pulls at her headlamp. Okay, donkey, I'll get it. She's caught her hair in the straps and clasps. Daddy, it's okay. It's too bright. She scrunches her eyes under his beam as he works. Cover your eyes, my donkey, he says playfully. He pinches each caught strand of her hair near the scalp so they won't pull and hurt as he works each tangle loose. Hurry. His hands don't shake. He works smoothly and quickly, though he can feel his heart jump around. There, he frees the headlamp. You can hold it in your hand like a flashlight. No, I want to wear it. Okay. He loosens the strap a bit more. Try it now. It flops a little as they walk, sending her beam bouncing and quivering, but she doesn't seem to mind. No salamanders. Be careful you don't step on them, she warns. Got it. He scans in front of their feet. Sweet donkey. Yes, Daddy. I need you to do something for me. Miss Stacy says you've been poking yourself in the arm with pencils and straws and stuff. She doesn't say anything, sweeps the pavement with her light. That's not something you should do. It worries people. Okay, but do you think we'll see salamanders? I hope so. He sweeps his beam over the road like hers, searchlights. You know Daddy doesn't do that anymore. It was a bad, bad mistake. Okay. When they reach the beach parking lot past the forest and bog, they turn around. She walks slower. They sweep their beams farther to each side of the road. Look, Daddy. She aims her beam ahead. He stops and grips her hand a little tighter. It's skunks, donkey, he whispers. Oh, it's skunks, donkey, he whispers. Skunks? It is? 3 babies and a mama. Or a daddy, she whispers. If the mom's gone, the daddy takes over by himself. He does. They watched the family cross and disappear back into the tall grass and forest, down the little hill toward the bog. Do you see any salamanders yet? Not yet, donkey. Me neither. That's okay. I want to see them. But we saw the skunk family. That's really special. Yeah, she says. You think this won't last. You think you know how this will end, the misery to come, and you're probably right. But the end is not the point. Stick around long enough, and every story ends sad, even yours. Meanwhile, as they scan the road ahead, their beams flash on little silver flakes in the pavement. See all those tiny reflections in the road? He asked. It's like camera flashes, hundreds of camera flashes for us. Like we're rock stars on stage, you and me. Yeah, she says. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. It was everything was beautiful. I'm going to pass along a couple things that were put into chat while you were reading. Kathleen said on the view that you showed us, oofda, that was great. And Claudia said, miss you, kid, your shirt rocks my world. So there you go. All right. We're gonna move on to Greg here. I'm struggling with my, there we go, full screen. All right, I'm gonna move on and introduce Greg, and he's sitting right next to me. So this is gonna be, we're gonna shuffle chairs. As soon as I'm done introducing him, he's gonna step in and take over here. So anyway, so let me tell you a little bit about Greg. And this comes from like the introduction to his book, which he gave me as a gift yesterday, and I've been reading and really enjoying. So, this is, he writes, bounced from a trampoline at 10, enduring a second back injury weightlifting in school and falling from a roof at 40. Born to be wild biker, Greg moved to Hawaii, but was sidelined by debilitating back pain and couldn't enjoy paradise. Dipping a toe into yoga, he discovered a healing road that reformed his mind and fixed his spine. And the book, I mean, honestly, I read it and I just calm down when I read it. It's just amazing. I had a hectic day and then I was like, I'm going to read some of Greg's book, and it was really wonderful. So originally from Wisconsin, Greg received his doctorate degree from the Chicago Theological Seminary, where he studied the healing power of touch in ritual environments. A graduate of Northern Michigan University and UW-La Crosse, he lives in Arizona and practices yoga at the Foundry Yoga in Tempe and leads workshops on mobilizing breath. His yoga writing has been published in over 20 national and international magazines, journals, and websites, registering, this is astounding, over 5 million readers. Some of his articles have logged nearly 400,000 views and have been shared over 7,000 times. Known as the hashtag motorcycling yogi, he's taught yoga for bikers since 2017 at Superstition Harley Davidson in Arizona, the only dealership in the country to hold yoga classes in its facility. So please help me in welcoming to Peter White Public Library, the motorcycling yogi, Greg. And I'm just going to do this now, just a second. And I'm going to move and Greg is going to take over. Let's see. We're at 7:25. So you got about 25 minutes or so. Yep.
Here we are. I can't believe my good fortune, Marty and Jonathan, the friends of Peter White Public Library, and other friends that are viewing tonight, to sit here in this chair in Marquette and read. It's an amazing joy. Large part of my soul is here. As Marty said, I live in Arizona now, but this practice transfers well no matter where I am. Jonathan, thank you. Marty, thank you. Friends of Peter White Public Library, thank you. My readings are about 21 minutes, so I have just a moment for introduction. You hear some music in the background because how can you write a book called Yoga Song and not have any songs? This is from a playlist that I use when teaching. Just a couple of notes about the book. The cover is the word is Geet in Sanskrit, but it's written in Hindi and it translates to song. I have a white lotus on the cover, which relates to one of the chapters, Lotus Rising. The book designer is Charlie Harvin, who lived here in Marquette, also a friend of mine. And he's in Bulgaria now, been there for years. We transferred 3 or 4 messages, came up with something that I liked, told him what I wanted, he did it, and there we are. I love the cover of this book. I wouldn't care if it was mine or somebody else's, but I like it. I'm not going to say much about the readings themselves. There are 5 short readings, about 3 minutes each, from various chapters or vignettes. I'll simply announce the title of the chapter or the vignette, and then read. With time left over, probably 5 minutes, and some discussion or talk back and forth. Anyway, thanks, friends, for tuning in, and anyone else who happens to be out there. Turn this down a little. I'm starting with the end, the epilogue. Many years ago, and far from the waters of Hawaii, where yoga first tumbled me, I set out on a 3-day vision quest in a land that Wyoming residents call the Red Desert. Before my quest began, I spent 2 days training the Lakota way. Once I walked into the desert, I would not see anyone or eat for 3 days. My instructions were simple and focused. Drink water, pay attention. For yoga, I give the same instruction today, only adding the admonition to breathe. I expected my vision quest would challenge me, but also help me connect to that which I had not yet connected. I didn't know it, but all those years ago, I was doing yoga. At dawn on the scheduled day, I walked into the desert to seek a new vision. My intention was to strip away all distraction in my experiment with truth and give it full attention with my full being. This is what yoga is to me now. It's a stripping away of distraction. It is a time and place where I build my satyagraha, truth force. In the Red Desert, I learned from the birds that if I had a song to sing, I had to sing it. It was not about how well I sang, but that I did. This is why I've written Yoga Song. It's not about how well I write or sing my yoga song, but that I do. Like most Western yogis, my practice draws only a small amount from the deep waters of yoga's healing. I've inherited Hatha Yoga, a practice of equal and opposite forces in action. It doesn't make me an expert. Rather, it opens me to become a seeker for the meaning of my forceful encounter that puts the dance between matter and consciousness front and center. My response as yogi, the sacred seeker to the sacred center, is to treat my yoga encounter as I to thou, a martial art of the soul. When I'm present in my yoga, I receive it in gratitude. This stands as the truth of my experience, a seeker, a yogi, a humble warrior, in gratitude for every song. Second reading is from the 2nd chapter, entitled simply Om, or A-U-M, Om. Lyrics from Woodstock by Joni Mitchell suggest that we are made of cosmic energy and matter. We are stardust, we are golden, we are billion-year-old carbon. We seldom hear such grandiose and luminous words to describe our being, but when we do yoga, we are just that. Shining and grand billion-year-old carbon, participating in a pattern that moves the stars and positions us to touch an inner Om at the core of our being. In the soft chant of Om, rooted and expressed from the core. Our cares are set free, allowing us to take notice of our deepest truth. We are beings at one with a divinely animated critical mass of stardust and carbon, waiting to meet, greet, and welcome us home. Cultural voices bombard us with a cacophony of dismissal, a poisonous milieu designed to make us feel small and inadequate. News and current events can leave us thinking we're an insignificant cog in a great drama that's happening elsewhere. But to trade our identity as golden children imbued with cosmic matter and dust for anything other than that is a trade down. It's easy to accept that we must pay attention to outer things as a way to participate in life's journey. And to a degree, it's true. But yoga challenges all of our values with a roadmap that is singular in its direction. It takes us to the seat of Om, to the core of inner self. This core fills out the full spectrum that we can navigate. And at the same time, it is the sacred self here and now. Reading the sound of Om and meditating on its meaning invites us to experience the divine breath that the Hebrews called Ruah, the Greeks Pneuma, and the yogis call prana. In the moment of Om, divine breath pauses our strategic and analytical brain while firing the existential and experiential brain. When we chant Om, we may discover that the only thing missing has been our awareness that we are living embodiments to the truth of Joni Mitchell's words. We're beings made of stardust, formed in spirit, animated by breath, joyful and spontaneous at heart. The directions to go home are clear. First, slow down and breathe. Then focus attention while the mind steadies into a concentrated gaze. And finally, at the end of practice, release into Savasana and come home to self. Coming home, some will chant the sonorous Om of creation. Others may vocalize a heartfelt namaste. Some may sing their yoga song in their asana in their own way. And for some, a silent song of the heart will rise from a meditative place of deep consciousness. This is yoga song, arising within the body electric in a primordial consciousness, both unique and universal. The luminous internal Om, the well-trod path, providing yogis with something the broken world cannot, the deep abiding peace of coming home. Third reading, Yoga, a breath-centric community. In the yoga space, I'm part of an ongoing privilege and play. I watch yogis fired by heat and cultural restlessness willingly move into asana and observe as they settle into the wisdom of this ancient practice. I say inhale and witness yoga's remix taking place as they root into their asana and arch upward. I offer another caring command to exhale as they breathe and fold into a shape that appears to both stretch and compress their bodies. The yogis before me are a blending force of opposites in their postures by bringing together upper and lower body. In seconds, they release from the pose, and I can almost hear their spine exhale in a deep song of relief. Observing the gathered yogis stretch into camel or cobra, I marvel that all of us are disconnected from living encounters with cobras or camels, and yet below the surface, we are cobra, camel, and every human is a living embodiment of primal organic movement. I glance around this outdoor deck and see the outline of my community. They are becoming new on a daily basis as they take up yoga. They act on faith to get here, so I act on faith to teach as the practice of yoga meets them in this global and spiritual energy. It takes courage to move beyond cultural stereotypes and do yoga. Leading, I set the route. And when ready, they follow the road home to themselves. Breath by breath, a universal yoga pilgrimage presses them to question their motives and boldly ask, why am I here? When the question arises, yoga's song takes over, and the yogis remember their courage. They stretch into their containers of reform and travel back to the beginning once again. The sun is setting, and I look to see my yoga students as hopeful. They tiptoe into newness and sip nectar from an oxygen-rich moment. Western light, partially eclipsed by Earth, illumines their faces with golden rays as they play dead to integrate the last breathing moments of the best previous moments. Alone, quiet, on the floor, they exhale, and on their backs they release into Savasana and become still as corpses decomposing into the ground. This breath-centric community is a great melting pot of diversity and energy. These teachers in my breath-centric community are not perfect, but they tell me something good and they invite me to embrace ecstasy and feel the wind in my fingers. Again, I hear a teacher say, listen to your breath. I listen and find when gratitude lightens the darkness, the goodness of life forms in my heart. We go out to go in, one of my Hawaiian teachers said. It's the genesis of a deeply connected personal makeover. Yoga's inward move is a great inversion of energy and attention, and it's fully accessible to every yogi from the first timer to the decades-long yoga practitioner. Yoga is soul work, deserving of command and care. Its lessons have been won through the centuries and are layered in principles unique and universal. Yoga takes form in us, as it has in all yogis from the past, in motion and in stillness. Yoga song is like all music, taking form through practice and consistency. It's the same with my community. By practice, yoked to individual integrity and consistency, we gradually turn from being just a group of people into a breath-centric community singing yoga songs of renewal. Maybe you're like me, often a doubting and thirsty person. Your days have registered on your body and your spirit is tired. Maybe today you don't want to do what life asks. But you hear yoga singing songs that flow like water from a clear blue mountain spring. Beside you, a thirsty man is dipping his cup into the spring. He raises a glass, drinks, turns to you and says, would you like some? How are we doing on time, Marty? 10 minutes. Okay, two more, about 3 minutes each. We're transforming the emotional body. The former director for Harley-Davidson's styling and graphics department, Louis Netz, once said, form and function both report to emotion. When we observe a yoga pose or the stylish symmetry of a Harley cutting a sharp curve, it's easy to believe motorcycles are about speeding through turns and yoga is about perfectly executed and aligned asanas. And it's true that a yogi on a mat or a Harley on the highway perform their function to a high degree. But the power of yoga, like the allure of a great motorcycle, is in its move from high function to strong emotion. The yoga journey is often an emotional road. Teachers sometimes say at the start of a pose, this might bring something up in you. This awareness is the beginning of yoga's emotional rescue and an apt illustration of how form and function both report to emotion. If one is aware of their emotional body through meditation, journaling, or deep reflection, yoga will put them directly in touch with this emotional awareness. It's not easy to find a curriculum for self-integration. Yet yoga brings us to a heightened awareness and raises the beginning steps for emotional healing as the yogi's ongoing project. Depth psychology asserts that our bodies and minds carry imprints of injuries, blocks, and failures, but it doesn't end there. The physical and emotional therapy of yoga begins there. A yoga song for transforming the emotional body is Redemption Song. None but ourselves can free our minds, Bob Marley sang. In yoga, we respond to the yoga song that our body is singing. And since we occupy the best position to define and transform our emotions, we use this knowledge to rewire our lives and release negatives. Yoga teachers could also rightly say that your yoga song might bring some emotions out of you that you are not yet ready to receive. This is how the growth curve works. We may not be quite ready, but are pushed by the emotion and physicality of yoga into readiness and the next bend on the journey. A friend recently went to a Carlos Santana concert. He wrote that it was a spiritual experience. I asked what he meant by that, and he responded, "Music always moves me, but his words were filled with grace and love. A mixture of children's photos throughout the world, smiling and dancing. He issued a call to rise up above the hatred. The music just echoed with me. It went deep." It's no surprise to hear that music does this. It's also what the yoga song of your body does in practice. Yoga, like music, is a visual, emotional, acoustic, vibrational, and feeling-based experience in the moment. It goes deep. And when the yogi listens to the yoga song of their own body, it takes them to work on transforming the emotional body and vice versa. It may very well lead to engaging a professional therapist because through yoga, many emotions rise to the surface from the deep well of biological and cerebral memory. Our working ground is the mat, and self-reflection happens in time. And when the yogi practices and reflects, healing happens in remarkable stages. It takes the yogi's attention to the emotions of the body and leads them, like music, to go deep and transform the emotions that truly hold the steering wheel to form and function. The last one is called Truth Force in your yoga. And you've heard me use the word satyagraha a couple of times. It was Gandhi's word for truth force. He said, "My creed of nonviolence is a very active force." And this is what he meant. Being truthful, nonviolent, which is active. Satyagraha, truth force. On my second trip to India, I studied at the Gandhi Peace Foundation in New Delhi and talked with Gandhian scholars from around the world. In the center's library, I read of the Jan Path, a way of living anchored in truth force, and his philosophies of bread labor for the individual and communal wholeness to sustain local economies. The Jan Path was Gandhi's wholesome and selfless program of local community service, healthy diet, meditation, cleanliness for body, economic justice, care for children, the infirm, family, and for the nation state. Yoga's complete program, including all the limbs of its teaching, moves us to appreciate many of these same values and choices. We learn this through yoga study and the revelation of our deepest truths. When we stay on the mat, a container within the container, we discover another level of identity and a broader revelation of truth force. Staying present in the container awakens within us a satyagraha. I watched a video of two men attempting to release a wildcat from a trap. One of the animal's legs was caught in the trap's iron jaws, but since it had sharp teeth and claws, the men were cautious as they tried to pin it down so they could set it free. The big cat was aggressive and panicked, but eventually it tired, and they were able to wrestle it to the ground and free the cat from the trap. Sometimes on a yoga mat, We may experience panic like the big cat. There are moments when our bodies shake, our minds race with doubt. But as we stay on the mat during stress, we learn to breathe in ease, where we find comfort and stillness in the midst of stress. This is yoga's marvelous therapeutic and a necessary antidote in today's high-stress world. Yogic awareness leads us to acceptance of our experience. But it's a conscious acceptance. For we ask, am I fully here? How are my mind and body responding? Am I enjoying this? Am I cursing, praying, submitting, resisting? In the pressured spaces of postmodernism, yoga moves us to meet a difficult world and greet it with equanimity. Yoga's truth force brings us to face ourselves on our mat, fall back into the fullness of self, and receive the lessons of motion and stillness taught in our stretch of spine and the growth of our limbs in space. Living the truth force of yoga spiritual science, we breathe deeply, and in that breath, release and enter the realm of our lived experience on the mat, an experience strengthened by the force of truth, with ourselves first, and then with all others. Yoga, formed from a crucible of scholarship in body, mind, and spirit intention, will empty and then fill the thinking reed that is the human being. It redeems scapegoats and embraces a full panorama of humanity in all its races, colors, and identities. Then yogis join a long line of grateful beings, stepping into a parade made of kings and queens. In yoga, the many are yoked together as one in union, yuj. In the yoga community, we are one on our mat in this breath-centric practice, but we are also a corporate group together as one. We are singular and also one yoga global community, slowly cleansed and restored into a new creation by the old song of an eternal melody. And now if you just, real briefly, we're going to apply this. Sit straight and imagine a magnet drawing your head right up the ceiling to catch the opposite pole, sitting straight. You're reaching up, stretching your spine, your cervical spine. You're reaching up with a flat line. You're gonna have you breathe in through your nose for 6 seconds. 6 seconds, I'll count it out. Hold it for 2. Breathe out again for 6. And as you breathe out, feel the body release. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, and calms the body and mind. We'll do that just 3 times. Remember, 6 seconds in, 2 second hold, 6 seconds out. Follow my direction, please. Spine. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale through the nose. Sink. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Release. Last time. Inhale. Hold. Release. But Jonathan and all of you, Marty, namaste. And what an honor it is to be here and share with John. And
Thank you, Greg.
and Marty. Everyone.
All right. Let me just do this here. I'm getting myself situated so I can see all of you. There we go. So, I'll give this back to you if you like. All right. We have a time for some questions or comments. If you can put those comments in the chat if you want, or you can unmute yourselves. And wow, there's a lot of comments here. Let's see. Let's see. Kathleen Heidemann said a doubting and thirsty person. Amen. Russ said, I got the mojo working there. Greg, good job, preacher man. And Jonathan liked your deafness poem, Bukowski flavored. Travis Knott said, I logged in just in time for the last piece. I'm misspelling, but perfectly spelled, because he spelled it P-E-A-C-E. And Claudia said, bravo, and thank you so much. Nice running into you before the reading, Greg. So if anybody has any other comments or wants to unmute and say anything, you're more than welcome to.
So I had,
I'm Beverly. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead, Beverly. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Greg. How so special to see you today and to hear you. Very moving, beautiful poems. Thank you so much. What gifts and what wise compassion. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming, Beverly.
My pleasure.
Roberta, you had something you wanted to?
Yeah, I have a question for Jonathan. I read in the email that Marty sent out earlier today that one of your poems has been featured in the Writer's Almanac. And I'm wondering, how did your poem get selected? Did someone refer this poem, to Garrison Keillor, or did you write 100 anonymous letters, all with different names saying, oh, you've got to publish this poem in the Writer's Almanac? How did that come about?
That's a great question because it's a fun story. So normally, like a lot of writers, I have my time of day that I don't answer the phone, I don't look at email, I don't do anything but just sit and write. And I cheated this one day, 7 or 8 years ago, and I just glanced. Dan Morris, who was a student of mine, he was doing his PhD. He'd been an MFA student of mine. He was doing his PhD in Auburn, so he was on Eastern time zone, and I think Eastern. Yeah. Anyway, he was a couple time zones ahead of me in Washington when I was in Washington State, and it was a text or an email or some kind of communication just said, holy crap, I just, congratulations, I just heard your poem on NPR. And clock, and by the time I had checked the text or email or whatever it was just like 6 minutes to the hour. At our local public radio station out of Spokane. So I ran and got Anya and Amy and I said, I think we need to listen to the radio. And we ran and gathered around the radio, and sure enough, it came on. I had no idea. So I don't know how he works now. I mean, naturally, he's not affiliated with NPR anymore. He does still have the Writer's Almanac podcast. But at the time, he had a whole staff like a research staff, and they would recommend things to him. They'd read stuff and they'd recommend things to him. And my second book had been out just a couple of years at that point, and somebody had seen the poem in there, and passed it along to him, and he'd chosen it. So it was one of those cool things where I didn't even know it was coming. They didn't tell me ahead of time. I received no notification. It was just a wonderful Christmas morning kind of surprise.
Right. Yeah. So they must have contacted your publisher or something to get permission to do that, but
I to this day I don't even know yeah, you got me.
Awesome. That's a great story. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Right.
I've got a question for Greg.
Sure.
So in Marquette, where do you practice? Do you practice outside? You don't have to be real specific, because I'm sure you like to. I know you like to preserve your private places. I know they all have code names. I happen to know the Coyote Trail, but just generally, do you practice outside? Do you have an inside space that you go to? Talk about your practice when you're in the hometown.
Well, I've tried to be outside, Jonathan. The weather hasn't been cooperating very well, but I mean, at Gitchagumi Campground, so we're trying to do stuff outside when we can. However, there is a studio in town that I've gone to in the past, And it has a new name now called Aluma Yoga. And in fact, I'll be doing 2 workshops for those folks this month. Aluma, A-L-L-U-M-A. Isabel had it for a while, and then she's in Florida now, and she just sold it in the month of June under new ownership, Brianna Salamella from Nagani originally. They have a beautiful studio, an incredibly beautiful studio. I was there this morning, and that's where I like to go, John. When I go inside, it's a little warmer than you would like, but for me, it's cool. It was heated to 88 degrees today. It's pretty cool for me, but I recommend it to anyone. Aluma.
You're muted, Jonathan.
All I was saying, your warm comment. So often, Greg and I have set out at the cafe tables outside 3rd Street Bagel Shop, and I'll be melting, and Greg will take his shirt off. And he's got all these gorgeous tattoos, and he's sitting there just happy as a clam in 90 degrees. And we should switch spots. You would be very, very, very happy here because
Yeah, and we're
feel
in
the
opposite
radiation.
poles,
It's
too.
like
I'm all dressed up here.
It's a little cool here. It would be
Yeah.
perfect for you
Yeah,
today,
you'd love it.
Jonathan. You'd love this.
But Aluma, A-L-L-U-M-A, I recommend that.
ALLUMA. Where is it in town?
Is that
Is that
McDonald's?
McDonald's? That's Washington Street.
Washington Street.
Right.
Yeah.
When are your workshops you're giving?
I believe they're the 17th and 28th. We just set it up today.
Do you need to go to the 17th to attend the 28th? Do they stack on top of each other? Can you just do one or the other?
Oh, they're offering me both days.
What I mean is, can an attendee, can a student come to just one, or does a student need to go to both?
Oh, no, one is fine.
Okay.
I'll see you on the 28th.
They'll be
All
similar.
right.
What?
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll see you on the 28th.
Marty, will you be able to alert us?
I
Will
can
you-
certainly, yeah, I
Okay,
can,
John.
I can certainly like get those dates and the address and everything from Greg, and I can send out one of my email
Thank
blasts for everybody. Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a hard type thing. It'll be a more slow movement oriented with just a couple of selections from the book. Breath work, which anyone can do. Breath work, just sitting. Some music and some easy postures. It's 75 minutes.
Great. Let's see,
Thanks, John.
just a couple, oh, Kathleen has a question. This probably will have to be our last one because we're getting near that time, but what's the Balinese poetry scene like? Balinese as well as touristy? She's just curious.
Yeah. So it's a magnificent arts culture, just an incredible arts culture. A lot of their poetry here is performative. It's a big performing arts world. Life here is outside all the time. All the halls, all the restaurants, supermarkets, everything. Most of Bali doesn't have walls, which does suit me. The heat doesn't suit me well, although last night was just magnificent, but not having walls does suit me. And so consequently, and it's also a very community-based, it's one of the friendliest cultures I've ever been in. Until noon, you bow to everyone you see. When you pass someone and, you deliberately try to look them in the eye, as you see somebody, and you bow to everyone. And they're huge on performance art, dance and performance art. So a lot of it is linked to ancient storytelling, Indonesian storytelling more generally. There's contemporary Balinese poets. I haven't yet read any of them. I'm looking forward to doing that. We're going up to a little arts village called Ubud. And so I'm going to try to get a hold of some translations there. It's really pretty cool when you go to a developing country and you kind of assume you're going to get everything you want in English, right? You're like, oh, well, I'll get my hands on some Balinese poetry because here I am, an American poet speaking English in Bali. It's not so true, right? I mean, it's not so true. But I'm hoping up in Ubud, there's a lot of bookstores, and it's a very artsy little town that I'll be able to come into contact with some. So I'll get back to you. I will absolutely let you know, Kathleen.
All right.
Jonathan, are you coming back to Marquette?
I am.
Soon?
Yeah, I'll be there. I get back on the day before Greg's workshop, actually. I get back on the 27th. I've got a
Okay.
wedding in Marquette, and then I'm going to work on our house over there. You've been our house over there
Yeah.
on Spruce for a couple
Uh-huh.
weeks. I try to paint a little bit of it so the neighbors don't kick me out of the neighborhood. I try to make at least a little token progress every summer. Greg Seipel, who's one of the famous Marquette house restorers, walked by one time, and he looks up at me, and I'm on the scaffolding up on one of the gables, and he says, "That's a 20-year paint job," because I'm taking it all the way down to the wood, and it's
Yeah.
wood that hasn't seen daylight in over 100 years. And he goes, "That's a 20-year paint job," and it took me a moment to realize he meant it's going to last 20 years,
Oh, very good.
rather than take 20 years, because it feels like it's going to take 20. Yeah, so I'll be home for the first couple weeks of
Hope
August.
to see you, Jonathan.
Yeah, it'll be good
Hope
to see everyone.
you.
Yes, you
Yeah.
bet.
Okay.
I'm just typing in, someone asked about the dates and times for the Greg's workshops here. So I'm just typing in the dates and the address for anybody that's interested right now. You can get it in the chat. So there you go. And then July 17th, you know what time in the
9:30 in the morning. I believe.
9:30 in the morning on July 17th and in the 28th.
It's in the evening, not quite sure of the time yet. I think
Okay,
around 5, but I'm not positive.
around 5 in the evening on July 28th. So
I'm thrilled to have Greg as my teacher again, at the prospect of having Greg as my teacher again this month. He's one of my first teachers. He was the campus advisor for Amnesty International when I was an undergrad, actually. And he had some work over in Grand Marais, and he said, "I think I'm going to bike over there. You want to go?" And Greg's just a couple years older than me, older enough that, as a 20-year-old guy, this slightly older guy says, "You want to go on a 2-day bike trip?" And he's just filled with wisdom and insight. I said, "Absolutely." And the learning that went on over those few days goes on to this day, and I can't wait to get some more. I've been learning from Greg for 35 years, I guess it is. Can't wait for some more.
Likewise.
and Claudia said this to you, Greg, something that you read struck me, Greg. Maybe you don't want to do what life asks. If we let the beauty of art help us, we can step out and do more of what life asks. Thanks for putting that in our brains.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's a really good comment to end with tonight.
Yes, it's really good.
Absolutely. I want to thank you all for coming. Just a reminder, we got Cindy Hunter Morgan next Monday, 7 p.m. in the community room here. And we've got a couple concerts next week as well. We've got on Tuesday, we got Troy Graham and Nils Lundquist at 7 p.m. on the steps. And then we have the Stapletons, which is a guitar harp duo that are going to be doing a concert at 7 p.m. on the steps next Wednesday. So lots of great stuff coming up. And I look forward to getting together with you, Jonathan, when you're in town. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Jonathan, I'll let you, what, are you going to go back to sleep or are you going to write? I don't know what you're going to do, but
I'll probably go down to the beach and ride a little bit.
all right. Well, gee, that's a tough life, I tell you.
It's going to be okay.
All right. Well, we'll see you all. Thank you again for coming, and you all have a wonderful evening. Okay. We'll see you later.
Thanks again, Marty.
Thank you. Mr. Roberta saying goodbye.